Professional education. Question number 1. With RA 9155, to which body were all the functions, programs, and activities of Department of Education related to sports competitions transferred? The answer is Philippine Sports Commission. Parenting styles influences children's development. Read the following parents' remarks for their children, then answer the question. Parent C tells her child, "You should do it my way or else." There is no discussion. Parent D tells her husband, "It is 10 p.m. Do you know where your child is?" Parent E tells her child, "You should have not done that. Let's talk about it so you can handle the situation better next time." Parent F tells her child, "You may do what you want. We will always be here for you no matter what you do." Which parenting style is authoritarian? That is, parent C tells her child, "You should do it my way or else." There's no discussion. Letter D. Two identical beakers, A and B, are presented to the child. Teacher Sonny pours the liquid from B to C, which is taller and thinner than A and B, but has equal capacity with B. The teacher asks if the beaker A and C have the same amount of liquid. The child says no, and points to C as the beaker that has more liquid. In which cognitive developmental stage is the child? Pre-operational stage. To determine her students' level of moral development, teacher Evangeline presents to her class a morally ambiguous situation and asks them what they would do in such situation. On whose theory is teacher Evangeline's technique based? Moral development, Coolbert. According to RA 9155, which among the following is considered the heart of the formal education system? The school. You arrange the rows of blocks in such a way that a row of 5 blocks is longer than a row of 7 blocks. If you ask which row has more, grade 1 pupils will say that it is the row that makes the longer line. Based on Piaget's cognitive development theory, what problem is illustrated? Conservation problem. According to RA 9155, school head has two roles, namely administrative manager and instructional leader. Next, after reading and paraphrasing Robert Frost's Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, teacher Marco asked the class to share any insight derived from the poem. In which domain in Bloom's taxonomy of objectives is the term paraphrase? Comprehension. Which characterizes a constructive feast teaching learning process? Conceptual interrelatedness. On which theory is the sequencing of instruction anchored? Sequencing of instruction anchored. Gagne's hierarchical theory. A common complaint of teachers about pupils is this: you give them assignment. You give them an assignment. The following day they come without any. You teach them this today. Ask them tomorrow and they don't know. It is as if there is nothing that you taught them at all. Based on the theory of information processing, what must what must teachers do to counteract pupils forgetting? Punish every child who can't give correct answers to questions? Work for meaningful learning by connecting lessons to what the pupils know. Reward every child who remembers past lessons. So the answer is 2 and 3. Work for meaningful learning by connecting lessons to what pupils know, then reward every child who remembers past lessons. When small children call all animals dogs, what process is illustrated? Based on Piaget's cognitive development theory, that is assimilation. Based on Bandura's theory, which conditions must be present for a student to learn from a model? Attention, retention, motor reproduction, motivation. That is all. That is attention, retention, motor reproduction, motivation. Letter C. According to Tolman's theory on purposive behaviorism, learning is goal directed. What is its implication to teaching? Evaluate lessons based on your objectives. Which is the ideal stage of moral development? Stage of universal ethical principle. Christina's family had a family picture when she was not yet born. Unable to see herself in the family picture, she cried despite her mother's explanation that she was not yet born when the family picture was taken. What does Christina's behavior show? Egocentrism. To help students learn to the, op- the optimum, Vygotsky advises us to bridge the student's present skill level and the desired skill level by scaffolding. Based on Piaget's theory, what should a teacher provide in the formal operation stage? Activities for hypothesis formulation. Do not cheat. Cheating does not pay. If you do, you cheat yourself, says the voiceless voice from within you. In the context of Freud's theory, which is R at work, superego. Here are comments from school head Carmen regarding her observations on teachers' practice in lesson planning. The word identify, tell, and enumerate are overused. Many times they make use of non-behavioral terms. Often their lesson objectives do not include value formation and inculcation. What can be inferred from the school head's comments regarding teacher-formulated lesson objectives? Very often lesson objectives are in the cognitive domain. Sassy. A grade 1 pupil is asked, "Why do you pray every day?" Sassy answered, "Mommy said so," based on Kohlberg's theory, in which moral development stage is sassy. Pre-conventional level. Teacher Fatima tells her students, "You must be honest at all times, not only because you are afraid of the punishment, but more because you yourselves are convinced of the value of honesty." Based on Kohlberg theory, which level of moral development does the teacher want her students to reach? Post-conventional level. Why is babyhood referred to as critical period in personality development? Because at this time the foundations are laid upon which the adult personality structures will be built. It is good to give students creative learning tasks because development is aided by stimulation. According to Haviger's development task, reaching and maintaining satisfactory performance in one's occupational career is supposed to have been attained during middle age. Students Dana says, I had to go to school on time. This is what the rule says. In what level of moral development is the student? Conventional. In planning for instruction, can a teacher begin with assessment? Yes, to determine entry knowledge or skill. Which among the following is closest to the real human digestive system for study in the classroom? Model of the human digestive system. Here is a question. Is the paragraph a good one? Evaluate. If broken down to simplify, which is the best simplification? Is the paragraph a good one? Why or why not? Which one is in support of greater interaction? Probing. Which this specific objective to reduce fraction to their lowest terms. This is how the teacher developed the lesson. Step 1. Teacher stated the rule on how to reduce fractions to their lowest term. Teacher 2 wrote 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 and showed how to reduce them to 1. Teacher 3, teacher wrote 3, 6, 4, and 9, 9, 9, showed how to reduce them to their lowest term. Step 4, teacher gave this written exercise to the class. Reduce the following fraction to their lowest terms 3, 7, 5, 8, 5, 4, 12, 14, 10, 16, 15, 6. Did the lesson begin with concrete experience then develop into the abstract? No. I want to compare two concepts. Which technique is most appropriate? Venn diagram. Which activity should a teacher have more for his students if he wants them to develop logical mathematical thinking? Problem solving. I want to use a pre-teaching strategy that will immediately engage my students in the content and will enable me to get an insight into how students think and feel about the topic, which is most appropriate. KWL chart. For discussion of topic from various perspectives, it is best to hold a panel discussion. After establishing my learning objectives, what should I do to find out my students already know and what they do not yet know in relation to my lesson objectives in the cognitive domain? Give a pretest. What characteristic what characterizes genuine change? Change in substance. In which strategy can students acquire information from various perspectives and lead to reflective thinking and group consensus? Small group discussion. At the end of my lesson on the role of a teacher in learning, I asked the class, in what way is a teacher an enzyme? With this question, it engaged the class in metaphorical thinking, which must be primarily considered in the choice of instructional aid, must be suited to the lesson objective. For lesson clarity and effective retention, which should a teacher observe according to Brunner's theory? Begin teaching at the concrete level but go beyond it by reaching the abstract. Is it advisable to use realias all the time? No, for the sake of variety of instructional materials. I want my students to look at the issues on the call for President Arroyo to step down from several perspectives. Which activity is most fitting? Panel discussion. I intended to inculcate in my students the value of order and cleanliness. I begin my lesson by asking them to share their experiences about the dirtiest and the cleanest place they have seen and how felt about them. From there, I lead them to the consequences of dirty and clean home of surroundings. In my lesson development plan, how do I proceed? Transductively. No, that is inductively, from specific to general. Teacher Neri wants to develop the ability of sound judgment in his student. Which of the following questions should he ask? With the elements of a good paragraph in mind, which one is best written? The teacher is the first audio-visual aid in the classroom. What does this imply? Your physical appearance and voice should be such that students are helped to learn. I used gumamela flower, a complete flower, to teach the parts of a flower. Which method did I use? Type study method. A teacher would use a standardized test to compare her students to national norms. Other than finding out how well the course competencies were met, teacher Kathy also wants to know her students' performance when compared with other students in the country. What is teacher Kathy interested to do? Norm reference evaluation. I want to help my students retain new information. Which one will I use? Mnemonics. I want to use a diagram to compare the traditional and authentic modes of assessment. Which one is most fit? Venn diagram. A big story in your local newspaper. You want to use headlines as inquiry device. To increase students' participation, you might begin by asking the class to infer connotations and denotations from the headline. If a triadic interaction includes three persons, how many persons are included in a dyadic interaction? When I teach skills that are critical to the learning of the next topics, what should I employ? I want my students to have mastery learning of a basic topic, which can help drill. Teacher Feng wanted to teach the pupils the skill of cross stretching. Her check-up quiz was a written test on the steps of cross stitching. What characteristic of a good test does it lack? In the parlance of test construction, what does TOS mean? Table of specification. If I favor assessment for learning, which will I do most likely? Conduct a pretest result, teach based on a pretest result, give specific feedback to the students, conduct peer tutoring for students in need of help. That is 1, 2, 3, and 4. When we say assessment for learning, it's the beginning or during your teaching. So conduct a pretest, that's before. Teach based on a pretest results. So that's during. Give specific feedback to the students. That's during also. Conduct peer tutoring for students in need of help during. After a lesson on the atom, the students were asked to work on a physical model of the atom to determine learning. For which group of students is building an atom model intended? Kinesthetically intelligent. I want to develop creative thinking in my students. Which ones should I use? Problem solving, brainstorming, dramatics. 1, 2, and 3. Problem solving, brainstorming, dramatics. Which is our effective methods in teaching students critical reading skills. Interpret editorials about a particular subject from their different newspaper. I want to present the characteristic features of a constructivist approach. What should I use? Attribute wheel. If all of your students in your class pass the pretest, what should you do? Go through the unit. Go through the unit as usual because it is a part of the syllabus. Teacher Vicky shows her students a picture of people in thick jackets. Then she asks them to tell her the kind of climate when the picture was taken. If she asks 5 questions of this kind and her students do not get them, it is safe to conclude that pupils are quite weak in the skill of inferring, which must go with self-assessment for it to be effective. Scoring rubric. Which group of score is most varied? The group with 0.90 standard deviation. The main purpose in administering a pretest and a post-test to a student is to measure gains in learning. Assessment is said to be authentic when the teacher gives students real-life tasks to accomplish. The following are computed means of a 100-item test. Physical science, 38 math, 52 English, 33 based on the data, which is true. The examinee seems which is true. The math test appears to be easiest among the three. An examinee whose score is within x plus 1 standard deviation belongs to which of the following groups? Average, which is true of bimodal distribution. The group has two different groups. When you reach the plateau of learning, what should you do? Reflect what caused it. What can be said if a student performance in a positively skewed scores distribution? Most students performed poorly. A number of test items in a test are said to be non-discriminating. What conclusions can be drawn? Teaching or learning was very good. The item is so easy that anyone could get it right. The item is so difficult that nobody could get it. The answer is 2 and 3. A test item has a difficulty index of 0.51 and discrimination index of 0.25, what should a teacher do? Revise the item. The difficulty index of a test item is 1. This means that the test is very easy, very easy. If the compound range is low, this means that the difference between the highest and the lowest score is low. What is the mastery level of school division in 100 item test with a mean of 55? 55%. A negative discrimination index means that more from the lower group answered the test item correctly. More from the upper group in an entrance examination. Students Anna's percentile is 25, P25. Based on this percentile rank, which is likely to happen, student Anna will not be admitted. What does a percentile rank of 62 mean? The student score is higher than 62% of all students who took the test. What does a computer have in common with a TV screen, which depicts in graphic form the social relations present in a group, sociogram. Planned ignoring, signal interference, and proximity control are techniques used in managing surface behavior. What should you do to get a child's attention when he is distracted by an object in the room? Call him by his name and tell him to pay attention. Put away the distracting influence. Involve him in helping with an activity. 1 and 2. Call him by his name and tell him to pay attention. Put away the distracting influence. Which practice is which eh, which practice is our present educational system is in line with Plato's taught that nothing learned under compulsion stays with the mind, making the teaching learning process interesting. In values education, faith, hope, and love are believed to be permanent values, whether they be valued by people or not. Upon what philosophy is this anchored? Idealism. Next is in the schools, we teach realities that cannot be verified by the senses, like an invincible God, invisible God, or Allah, empiricist, empiricist, which emphasize on the non-violence as the path to true peace, as discussed in peace education, Hinduism. I make full use of the question and answer as a model for discussion. From what is this question and answer method? Question and answer, that is Socrates. A wife who loves her husband dearly becomes so jealous that in a moment of savage rage kills him. Is the wife morally responsible, and why? Yes, she killed her husband simply because of jealousy. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Man may understand all about the rotation of the earth, but he may still miss the radiance of the sunset." Which type of education should be emphasized as implied by Martin Luther King Jr.? Moral example has a greater effect on pupils' discipline than laws and codes of punishment, is an advice of teachers from Moral Example, Confucius. The principle of spontaneity against artificiality will make you accomplish something. Leave nature to itself, and you will have harmony, is an active advice from the Taoist. Tao, Taoist. The significance of liberal education in holistic development of students is supported by perennialism. Is a sick teacher the only one assigned in a remote school excused from her teaching duty? Yes, she is sick. What is a demonstration of your authority as professional teacher? You decide on how to teach a particular lesson. Which statement on true authority is wrong? It seeks its own satisfaction and privilege. When a teacher teaches the idea that it is wrong to think that Filipino style products and ideas are inferior to those of other nationalities, he fights against xenocentrism. Teacher Lolita, a teacher for 40 years, refuses to attend seminars. She claims that her 40 years of teaching is more than all the seminars she is asked to attend. Is her actuation and thinking in accordance with a code of ethics for professional teachers? No. A professional teacher, regardless of teaching experience, ought to go through continuing professional education. A principal asked her good teacher to write modular lessons in science, and then she had them published with her name printed as author, which is unethical in this case. She got the merit which was due for her teacher writer. Is it ethical on the part of teacher to proselyte in her classroom every Friday? No, a teacher shall not engage in the promotion of her religious interest in the classroom, which can promote national pride among pupils studying the lives of outstanding Filipinos here and abroad, reading the lives of saints of the church, studying Philippine history with emphasis on the victories and greatness of the Filipino people. Three only. Which is the exodus of Filipino professional described as brain drain. Those who go abroad are usually the better. Filipino professionals serve other countries instead. They contribute to a nation building through their dollar remittance. 1 and 2. You want to report on a colleague's act of immorality. You don't have the courage to confront her. To end her illicit affair with a married man, you write and secretly distribute copies of your anonymous letter against your fellow teacher. What should have been done instead? If the charge is valid, present such charge under oath before your school head. Teachers often complain of numerous non-teaching assignments that adversely affect their teaching. Does this mean that teachers must be preoccupied only with their teaching? Yes, if they are given other assignments, justice demands that they be properly compensated. My right ends where the rights of the other begin. What does this mean? Rights are not absolute. History books used in the schools are replete with events portraying the defeats and weaknesses of the Filipino people. In the spirit of nationalism, how should you tackle them in the classroom? Present the facts and use them as means to teach and inspire your class. Should an association of teachers obey in a Supreme Court's decision, even if conflict with its interests and opinions? Yes. A teacher does not agree with the selective retention policy of the school and she openly talks against in her classes. Is her behavior ethical? No, it is her duty to faithfully carry it out, even if she does not agree. If you have a problem with another teacher, she first step towards resolution should be for you too. Talk directly with the teacher involved. What is ethical for you to do if deep within your heart you do not agree with the school policy on student absences? Understand the policy and support the school in its implementation. Implementation. Mrs. Domingo developed a lesson on the concept of fraction this way. First, she presented one pizza, and then asked the pupil to cut it into two. She called one part of pizza one half, and the two parts of two half. Then she wrote one half and two half on the board. She proceeded to ask another pupil to divide the half parts of the cake into two again. Then they wrote one half and two fourths. And 3/4. Then she used the model of fractions, wooden circle, divided into two, and 3 and 4 shows one half, one fourth, one third, one two fourth. Then she went back to the fraction she wrote on the board. She asked her pupils for the meaning of one half, one third, one fourth, two fourth. Did Miss Domingo follow Werner's three stages development of knowledge? Yes. In this context of Werner's principle of knowledge representation, which is the inactive phase of the lesson on fraction, presenting the pizza and cutting into two and four. Would it be easier? Would it be easier to understand and retain the concept of fractions if Mrs. Domingo began the lesson on fractions with the meaning of no, for better learning we proceed from the concrete to abstract. Which part of the lesson is the symbolic stage? Writing the fraction, one half, one fourth, one two fourth on the board. Thus the development of the lesson on the fraction conforms to the bottom-up arrangement of the learning experience in the Edgar Dale's Code of Experience? Yes. In the faculty recollection, the teacher were asked to share their In the faculty recollection, the teacher were asked to share their thoughts of the learner, their primary customer. What follow is the gist of what were shared. The learner is a product of his environment. Sometimes he has no choice. He is determined by his environment. Teacher B, the learner can choose what he can become despite his environment. Teacher C, the learner is a social being who learns well through an active interplay with others. Teacher D, the learner is a rational being. Schools should develop his rational and moral powers, whose philosophical concept is that of a teacher A. The learner is a product of his environment, that's behaviorist. Teacher B response comes from the mouth of an teacher B. The learner can choose. Choose is existentialist. If you agree with teacher C, you are more on. The learner is a social being who learns well through an active interplay. Progressivist. If you identify yourself with a teacher D, you adhere to what philosophy? The learner is a rational being. School should develop his rational and moral fowl. Perennialist. Whose response denies man's free will? Teacher A. School head Amelia wants her teachers to be constructivist in their teaching orientation. Which material will her teachers most likely use? Hypothesis. Which material will her teachers most likely use to avoid unquestionable loss? On which assumptions is are the principal PAL action anchored? Students learn by personally constructing meaning of what is taught. Students derive meaning from the meaning the teacher gives. Which does the school head Amelia wants her teachers to do? Let their student construct meaningful sentence based on the lesson. Which one her teachers then avoid? Students' memorization of facts for testing. On the first day of school, teacher Vieta oriented her class on procedures to be observed in the passing paper, getting textbooks from and returning the same on the bookshelf, leaving the room for necessity in conducting group work. She arranged the chair in such a way that students can interact and can move around without unnecessarily distracting those seated. She involved the class in the formulation of rules to ensure punctuality, order, and cleanliness in the classroom. On what belief is teacher Beta's management practice anchored? The classroom environment affects learning. Teacher Beta involved her students in the formulation of class rules, which describes her classroom management style. Democratic. Which adjective appropriately describes Teacher Beta as a classroom manager? Proactive. What was the classroom management practice for Teacher Vieta to have involved the students in the formulation of class rules? Yes, it makes students feel a sense of ownership of the rules. Which assumption underlies Teacher Vieta's classroom management practice? Classroom routines leave more time for class instruction. Case number 5. Mr. Santos' lesson was on water conservation. He presented a graph that compared water consumption of small and big families. Before he asked any of the questions, he asked someone to stand up to give an answer. He called only on those who raised their hands. The question he asked were, what do you see in the graph? How do you compare the water consumption of small and big families? Why do you most of the big families consume more water than the smaller families? Do all the small families consume less water than the big families? Explain your answer. In your opinion, why does one small family consume more water than one big family? In what sense is water wasted? Water always of conserving water. Are the families presented well at water conservation? Why or why not? What generalization can you draw about water consumption and size of families? Is there any convergent question from 1 to 8? Yes. Question 7. What are ways to conserving water? Which question techniques of Mr. Santo does not enhance interaction? That is 2 and 3. Calling only those who raise in their hands. Calling on someone before asking the question. Which statement on wait time is correct? Wait time turns off slow thinking students. To connect the lesson on water conservation to the life of students, which question is most appropriate? What may be the reason why even if family B is not as big as family C, it consumes much more water than family C? Were all the questions of Mr. Santo divergent? No. Which the topic of the human circulatory system, teacher John formulated the following lesson objective. Given a model of the human circulatory system, the student must be able to understand the route of a blood circulation. After discussing the process of blood circulation, the teacher must be able to lead his pupils in enumerating circulatory system related diseases and inciting the causes and prevention of such diseases. Is objective number one in accordance with the principle of lessons objective formulation? No, the word understand is not behavioral term. How can you improve objective two? Remove the phrase semantic mapping. The current emphasis on the development of critical thinking. Oh, sorry. Formulate it from the learner's point of view. Do both objectives include a criterion of success? An element of a lesson objective cited by Robert Major? No, they don't. Is it objective two? Is objective two in accordance with the principle of lesson objective formulation? No, it does not describe pupils' learning behavior. Which one is the measurable learning behavior in objective number one? None. Teacher Nika wants to check which assumption underlies teacher Beata's classroom management practice classroom. Formulated from the learner's point of view. Do not do both objectives include a criterion success in an element? No, they don't. Objective in accordance with okay. What do the interactive teaching? Which act of teacher Fantinas is contrary to the principles of teaching? Giving a test to discipline the class. Okay, let's stop for that.